Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Robyn Elms. Today I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of renting versus buying. I hope you find this useful. With renting, you have a lot more freedom. For example, if you wanted to up and leave at any point, you could do, although you'd probably have to forfeit your deposit. However, if you'd bought a house and you wanted to move because maybe you'd seen your dream house, you would have to sell the house that you're in first before you can move. And that might take months or even years if you're really unfortunate. One big pro of renting versus buying is that you're debt free. Of course, when you buy a house, you've got this really big mortgage that might last for maybe 20 to 30 years of your life. And I don't know about you, but that is very scary, the idea of being tied down for that length of time. And then we've got cost. When you rent, that is considered to be dead money, although to be fair, you are paying to have a roof over your head, so that's not completely true. However, when you buy a house with a mortgage, you're also paying interest on that mortgage, which is obviously just going to go straight to the mortgage company and not towards you owning that home. So that could also be considered dead money. With renting, usually you've got better cash flow. You've got a set amount that you pay every single month, whereas when you buy a home, you've got other things that you might need to think about. After your fixed interest rate ends, that could be maybe 2, 5 or even 10 years, the mortgage payments every month are going to vary because the interest rate is going to vary, unless of course you remortgage. And that varying amount in the monthly payments can make it really hard to budget around. And if you're somebody like me that likes to know where you stand on costs, it's a bit frustrating. A negative point with renting is that of course, usually rents go up every single year. Maybe if you're on the same pay, it means you've got less disposable income every single year that goes on, which isn't great. A big negative of buying is that you have to have saved up a very big deposit before you can even get a mortgage. And for those of you that want a really good interest rate, you have to save even more than 10%, maybe 20 or 40% to get the best mortgage deals. Another bad thing about buying is that you've got all these extra costs. You might have a mortgage arrangement fee that could be anything up to £1,000, or you might not have any mortgage fees, but you've got a higher interest rate because you're not paying for that initial arrangement fee. You've also got solicitors fees, which is a must when you're buying property. You might have stamp duty if your property is over a certain value, or you've got multiple homes, and you might also have estate agent fees. Just a little tip for you: if you are selling property, you can go with a company called Strike and they can sell your home for free. I'll leave some more information about that in the description box below. A positive of buying is that if you're buying in cash, it can make a lot of sense because then you've not got the issue of having to keep paying every single month for rent because you own it outright. Maybe if the mortgage payments are only slightly more than renting, then it can make more sense to go for it. And a really big positive of buying is that usually property prices do go up. They don't tend to go down too much. Okay, now let's think about size. If you're renting, usually you might only be able to afford a place that's quite small, let's say a room in a house or maybe a 1-bedroom flat. This can be a bit annoying when you might not have much privacy or you don't get your parcels delivered to your door. When you're buying, you might be able to find a place that's bigger than where you're currently renting. Now let's think about location. With renting, you might be able to find a place that's in a really good area, that's got a great community and great schools, whereas if you had to buy that place, you probably wouldn't be able to afford it. If you're buying a property and you're limited to what you have saved and also what you can borrow from a mortgage company, you might only be able to buy in areas that aren't very good. For example, the neighbourhoods might not be very nice, they might have quite high crime rates, or maybe not very good schools, and if you've got a growing family, that might not be very ideal for you. And now we've got pride/legacy. Of course, when you buy a home, there's a great satisfaction of being able to say you own your home, and over time, as you're paying off more of that debt, you're increasing the equity in your home. By the time your children grow up, you will be in a position where you can take equity out of your home so that they have a deposit for their first home, which is a great thing to be able to do for your children. Whereas with renting, you've got nothing really to show for your money over all those years of paying rent. And the thing is, when your children are older, it's going to be a lot harder for them to get onto the property ladder because, as I'm sure you've noticed, property prices keep increasing, which means that home ownership for our children is becoming more and more unattainable. One negative of home ownership is that some people buy a house purely because of social status. Not that it gives them any particular pride, they just want to shove it in people's faces and be like, yeah, I own my own home. That is definitely not a good reason to be buying a house. Buying a house needs to be a blessing. It shouldn't be for social status at all. My final point is about decoration/maintenance. When you're renting, you can't decorate the place the way you would like to, and you might even have to ask permission to decorate the place that you're living in. That's basically your home, and that might make you feel a bit weird. And when you buy your own home, you can do literally whatever you want to the property. You can paint the walls black, red, pink, green, take the carpets up, do whatever you like. One really big positive of renting is that if anything goes wrong, you don't have to pay for it. That's on the landlord. However, I'm sure a lot of you are aware that lots of landlords do like to cut corners to keep their costs low, and that might involve doing poor quality repair work or getting cheap materials to replace old materials, which might not be very aesthetic to look at. And when you're living in that property and have to keep looking at these ugly materials that have been put in by your landlord, it might create a negative atmosphere for you. On the flip side, when you are buying a property, anything that goes wrong is on you. You have to fork out the money for it. Nobody's going to come along and fix it for you for free, and that is a big shock. A lot of people think that when they buy a house, everything everything's going to be hunky-dory, but no, there will always be something that comes along that you'll need to fix, unfortunately. And if you've already got quite poor cash flow and don't have much savings, that can rack up a lot more debt, and if you're not careful, you might miss mortgage payments, which will mean that your home will get repossessed, and then you're back to square one again with having to rent. Renting versus buying is a very individual thing. You need to weigh the pros and cons in your individual case because it will be different from person to person. Make sure that whatever you decide, it makes sense financially. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're worse off. And if you're lucky enough to still be living at home, try and stay there for as long as you can so that you can save more money, because the pros outweigh the cons. And as soon as you've moved out of home, it'll be very hard for you to move back into home once you've got a taste of the freedom and privacy you have when you live in your own space. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day. Sending you peace and love. Goodbye.